How many of the people that were either supportive of or engaged in attempts to set fire to hotels containing refugees this summer will also be people who are sick to death of hearing about the situation in Syria? It's weird, isn't it? I don't have a particularly sparkling insight into that cross-section of society, but the idea that you can not care about the situations and scenarios that create exoduses of humanity while being passionately opposed to the consequences of those exoduses of humanity is yet another illustration of how dangerous it is for disgusting people in public life to offer up simplistic solutions to incredibly complicated problems. But none of us are perfect. None of us know everything, despite sometimes perhaps giving the impression that we think we do. Did you just hear Angela Eagle in the news then? Did you hear that bit about what happens in Germany if you are involved in in people smuggling? The idea that if you were helping somebody make their way, or rather, if you were smuggling somebody towards a country that was not in the European Union, you would not actually be a criminal in Germany. I'm just going to say that again. Remember, in 2016, everybody knew exactly what they were voting for. So huge amounts of the infrastructure of international people smuggling rings are based in Germany, up to and including the actual vessels, as I understand it. The particular types of vessels best suited to those sorts of hazarded crossings are largely concentrated, for reasons, in Germany. And if you voted for Brexit in 2016, you voted to decriminalise involvement in people smuggling in Germany if the people had the United Kingdom as their final destination, as opposed to, for example, France or Spain or Italy or any other country that remains in the European Union. How many times has Boris Johnson or Jacob Rees-Mogg or Nigel Farage acknowledged their role in decriminalising involvement in people smuggling in Germany? A massive contributory factor to the explosion in small boat crossings that we have witnessed since. I find these moments almost unbelievable in their crassness and their consequence, because the conversation still continues. Yesterday I was hearing, we don't want to talk about Brexit. We don't want to talk about Brexit. You literally can't talk about why the government have had to sign a deal with Germany that brings us somewhere closer to where we were before we left the European Union without talking about leaving the European Union. I mean, hands on heart, how many people listening to this right now do you think knew that little wrinkle of UK law outside the world of immigration and asylum? How many people knew that as a direct consequence of Brexit, activities facilitating migrant smuggling to the UK would not be deemed as criminal offences? So Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, if this is the stuff that keeps you awake at night, she should be getting carried around the room on your shoulders at the moment, because she has now signed a deal making clear that activities facilitating migrant smuggling to the UK will be deemed criminal offences. Do you know what? I could sit here for an hour talking about this simple thing, not just because the growing clamour from people that told you to vote for Brexit now telling you to stop talking about it, as the job of dealing with the consequences and undoing some of the damage is going to be generational. But because the people who've been encouraged to take their anger out, the anger that should, of course, be directed at the people that told them Brexit was going to be brilliant. Boris Johnson was a stand-up guy. Liz Truss was an economic genius. Austerity was a necessary price to pay for having billionaire bankers in our country. All of those people, the people who told you Liz Truss's budget was a stroke of economic genius, all of those people are directing your anger at refugees, directing your fury at refugees, without acknowledging once that the single most controversial focal point of the entire so-called migrant crisis was caused in large part by our self-imposed removal from the European Union. How many times have you heard that point raised? So the government, a far from perfect operation, I think everyone can agree about that, quietly undoing some of the damage done by Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. David Frost negotiated the deal that rendered people smugglers in Germany non-criminal as long as the people they were smuggling were on their way to the UK. You see what I mean about the importance of these issues that don't get anything like the attention that they should? Also, if the Tories had signed this deal, what do you think they'd be doing now? If the Conservatives had signed a deal that was designed to make life much, much harder, in fact, to recriminal, but they couldn't though, could they? The Tories couldn't do a lap of honour about this because they would have had to admit, we fixed that thing we broke. That's why people want you to stop talking about Brexit. The people who won. You can't not appreciate the comedy of that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Imagine if in 1967, supporters of the England football team started demanding that we never mention last year's World Cup final ever again. Victory! Shh, don't mention the win. No one ever asks you to be silent about a win if they're proud of the win or if the win has turned out well. So the Tories couldn't even do this. Not only did they fail to address the policy because they probably didn't understand it, but they couldn't charge themselves with the job of undoing it because they did it in the first place. What do you mean? What do you mean people smugglers in Germany aren't criminals? No, they are criminals as long as they're smuggling people to European Union countries. They're not criminals if they're smuggling people to the UK. How the hell did that happen? That's not a phone-in, although I'm tempted. I cannot lie. I'm tempted. How the hell did that happen? Do you think Farage even knows? Do you think he even understands it today? That his beloved Brexit was directly responsible for decriminalising people smugglers? He doesn't care. He's probably off to Dover with his Fisher-Price binoculars so he can rub his thighs while actually, there aren't any boats crossing the channel at the moment. Always breaking things. It's extraordinary, isn't it? But there it is. You voted for it, right? And everyone knew exactly what they were voting for. What do we want? We want people smugglers in Germany to be decriminalised. When do we want it? Well, 2016, please. Or if that's too soon, maybe when David Frost's deal kicks in 2019, 2020. Sensational, right? Sensational.